Well, let me welcome you to the conversation on Signature Show this Sunday. There are so many issues in the Nigerian polity that require interrogation. And this Sunday, we are taking off with two critical policies of the Tinubu administration. The two policies appear wonderful on the surface, and I think also a number of people are commending the president for taking those steps. But beyond the veneer or the sheen, are there other issues that we can examine critically so that the government can also benefit from our thinking? The first is the proposal by the Commission on Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission to increase the salaries of public office holders by 114%. 3 weeks ago, I said that that was on the threshold of betraying the president, but that was a comment. And just last week, the president obtained the approval of the National Assembly to spend 500 billion naira as palliative to alleviate the consequences, the fallout of the subsidy removal on PMS. The president also has the benefit of the $800 million which had already been negotiated before he arrived from the World Bank. These are the two issues we want to look at this Sunday afternoon. And my guest, as always, is somebody who knows. I do not know. Prof Godwin Owoh, who is not just a financial accountant, he's a development economist as well, a development financial expert. He's somebody who's been in the thick of Nigeria's public finance analysis and all that. Prof, you're welcome to the conversation.
Thank you very much.
Prof, I'm coming from total point of ignorance. Let me take on the first issue, and that is increasing the remuneration of public office holders, by which the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission includes the president and his deputy and his ministers and other such political appointees, the governors, their deputies and the state assembly members, the National Assembly members, and some judiciary officers These are public office holders. 114% increase in their remuneration. When labor has not extracted 1% yet, first from two dimensions. Do you think that this increase addresses the inequity in our remuneration framework in the country?
Obviously, the answer is very clear. It's a big no. It does not. And luckily, in fairness to the president and the presidency, they have issued a disclaimer.
Yes, they have.
To that position.
Yes, they have.
And the president and the presidency had clearly stated that there is no such proposal before it, and that the news or the message or the impression being canvassed in that direction is simply a misinformation. So we take it by that. We take it by that because even if the president have seen it, but I have come back to say it's a misinformation, it obviously means that it did not make sense to the president. Just that, like, it does not make sense to anybody now in this country. And perhaps even some of those who are purported beneficiaries will be embarrassed because they know the exact situation of the Nigerian economy. They know the exact penury in which the average household is into. They know the difficulty parents and students are facing in view of the increases in fees and cost of maintenance of even our youthful children that are in school. So it doesn't make sense, and the president has said so. And that is where I think we should rest that issue, that it does not exist. It does not exist. Yes.
But now, as we talk this afternoon, the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission has not denied flying that kite. I wish they would deny it. But since they have not denied, let me reason from the point that yes, indeed, they attempted such a proposal, which the president says it is not countenancing. Does it show institutional sensitivity to national reward conditions for that commission to even think of making that kind of adjustment, since it knows it doesn't work across board?
Yeah, I think, you see, I wouldn't worry much about the texture and the communication capacity of the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission because of the fundamental default in the way the members are recruited. They are, if you look at the names, they are all pure politicians that are now saddled with the responsibility of managing revenue mobilization and fiscal issues. If you look at the mandate, going by the mandate of the decree that established it in 1989, down to the amendments over the years, you will see that that commission is actually supposed to be populated by active, aggressive, and deep-rooted professionals, not politicians. But because the Constitution or the Act, the decree then turned Act, had now made it compulsory that each geopolitical zone will send in, they are simply sending in politicians. And when they get in there, it becomes a promotion of rentialism, a promotion of cronyism, such that you will see their work, their adjustments, even in the issue of revenue allocation. If you watch the last recommendation they sent in, you will discover that the states got highest percentages in that order, which is signifying their intention to please their masters who nominated them into that commission. So that is a fundamental problem. And surprisingly, the current dissolution does not affect them, since they are agencies and commissions that are established by the Constitution. But we hope that going forward, the current commission as constituted by the president needs to be reviewed and populated by core professionals who will have some allegiance to professionalism and the ordinary man on the streets. And I do not see such a big commission established by the Constitution thinking that mere allocation of figures makes any sense. It doesn't show any technical work. The issue of revenue mobilization is heavy. 3 major planks. One would have expected them to fashion out modalities for reducing cost of governance without reducing the quality of delivery of governance. Then recovery of lost resources and opportunities, financial and otherwise. Then ensuring optimal revenue input into government. Because the idea of increased revenue does not just mean having physical inflow. No, it involves reduction of costs, proper measurement of costs, values and costs being properly measured, then pushing a philosophy that government business should be conducted with private sector consciousness. That is what revenue mobilization means. If I have 10,000 naira and I'm able to manage and cut irrelevant movements and expenditures such that I can make do with 8,000 and save 2,000, it's better than having 30,000 and frivolously spending up to 40 even with 10,000 in borrowing.
Prof, what you just said to me now is that in fact that commission is a critical institution for determining, influencing, if possible, reducing the cost of governance.
Exactly. Not inflating it, increasing it, then seeking favors up and down, such that even the individual, the institutions you want to favor say, no, we don't want that favor, it's too much. Don't do us that favor. Is it a Greek gift? Is there anything behind it? It's serious. They're supposed to be at the center of cost measurement, at the center of accountability, liaising with anti-corruption agencies, liaising with economic management agencies to optimize the fiscal and monetary stance of governments. That is their role. And if you watch over the years, sometime in 2022, they went to court with the FIRS contesting, oh, you have eaten into my power, I'm supposed to read. Then the next minute, we are collaborating with this. No, that's not their job. It's supposed to be star-studded, liaising with the oversight committees of the House, Federal House of Representatives, the Senate, to give effect to Section 88 of the Constitution that anchors oversight on three main issues: checking corruption, inefficiency, and waste. They are actually the operational institution to give vent to that provision. Because if you look at that section, the section simply asks both houses to just expose. That's all, no action. Is the revenue mobilization. By today, the revenue mobilization and fiscal allocation supposed to have taken certain individuals to court, supposed to have recovered or have a very sound framework for recovering. So revenue is not just pursuing people up and down, just like the VIOs in Abuja are doing. Hunting very keke drivers, hunting them up and down. In fact, yesterday, a keke driver fell off the road and the pot of soup he's carrying was splashed all over the place because he had not perhaps gotten one type of paper or the other. That is not it. This institution is supposed to anchor revenue by minimizing waste, recovering whatever had been wasted, then cutting out irrelevant programs and projects that increases the appetite for huge expenditure. That is revenue. Revenue does not really mean when you have that physical money coming in addition. No. And sharing it. No, that is not what it is. Revenue means the quality, the discipline, the level of discipline within the system. Anti-corruption is also part of revenue. Because if you extort 10,000 from me, which you are not supposed to, for which you have not given me any value, it's a minus to the level of surplus I should be on. So their definition is extremely narrow and very ordinary.
Okay, Prof, let us leave that commission for now. I'm sure that the executive, the presidency, should be very happy this afternoon that the National Assembly has been very quick in approving its request for 500 billion to address the fallout of the removal of a subsidy on PMS. Now, I want to read some of the figures because the document shows graded allocations to certain institutions. But let me also lift one of them that concerns virtually everybody watching the program this afternoon, and that is where the executive intends to allocate 8,000 naira per month to about 12 million Nigerians, households who are very poor, as part of the move by the presidency to alleviate the sufferings occasioned by the removal of subsidy on petrol. Let me also look at some others. Now, 185.23 billion will be allocated to the Ministry of Works and Housing to alleviate the impact of the severe flooding experienced in the country in 2022 on road infrastructure across the 6 geopolitical zones. 19.2 billion will be given to the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, also to address some of the shortfalls or the impact of that flooding on that sector. 35 billion will be given to the National Judicial Commission or National Judicial Council, and 10 billion to the FCT, because quite a lot of infrastructure was impacted by the floods of last year. And there are very many destitutes now aggregating in the FCT, and 70 billion is to be given to the National Assembly to support the working conditions of new members. Can I start from the one that appears very populist. 8,000 naira per month for a minimum of 12 million households for the next 6 months. The former administration gave us, we the poorest of the poor, $10,000, 10,000 naira in the month. The last administration fed so many of our children at school once in a day. And they were called poverty alleviation. But if you go into our streets today, after the 10 million naira, there are more Nigerians who are begging for a living. More Nigerians in the street begging for a living. Cursory examination, if the number is increasing, you could say rationally that 10,000 naira that was given by the Buhari administration did not quite alleviate the poverty, since the number is increasing. If we learn from the past, do you think that this 8,000 naira per household of 12 million Nigerians is not also merely throwing money at a problem?
Exactly. That is unfortunately what it is. And I'm convinced that the current government will do much more thinking in that area, because it does not appear to go near towards solving the solution, the problem. You see, you just made the point. Splitting huge sums of money into pieces makes no meaning than when it is invested en bloc in just one area. There's just one area that if you put in these funds, then household development and poverty alleviation becomes organic. Until it becomes organic, it makes no sense. Why do we talk of industrialization? What are the circle that sustains household survival into firms, even into governments? Industrialization. Get people to work. Nigerians, especially the politically aligned ones, are not doing anything. No production. There's no production going on in this country, surprisingly, because all aspects where resources are supposed to be generated are comatose. They are not there. Yet everybody is crying no job simply because you can't get a ministry or an MDA where you'll be paid for doing nothing. Once that is the position, there's unemployment. Why should there be unemployment? Like this money you mentioned, 500 billion. Now, if you divide that 500 billion by 774 local governments in this country, you'll be having something in the neighborhood of 646 million. Now, if you go back to the 800 million World Bank that is coming from World Bank, multiply it by about 800. You'll be getting a total of 640 billion. Now, by the time you add both of them and divide by 774 local governments, each local government will be having about 1.47 billion. That is 1.5 billion. Now, by the time you empower every local government by 1.5 billion, such that they are mandated to put up at least 2 industries across the 774 local governments, you will discover that from the point of clearing the sites, getting the blocks, getting the build, getting all the materials, up to production, it will not take more than 18 months. Now imagine how the economy will look like. Imagine what the level of household income will be. Imagine the degree of development that will be organic within the 774 local governments that will be producing one thing or the other, targeted to areas where they have comparative advantage. That is how an economy grows. Nobody is perpetually poor. I don't believe in poverty alleviation. You cannot mark out anybody and say this person is perpetually poor. What is poverty? Poverty is the capacity of the head. Nigerians are not sick. They are not all mental people. They are very hardworking, aggressive individuals who are competitive. That is why when they come to criminality, it becomes very serious. That tells you that those youths that are changing their focus negatively are naturally very, very intelligent and capable of doing the right thing to the highest heavens. That's the truth about it. So I don't believe that any Nigerian is poor. If we engage in organic growth, organic income availability to everybody. Look at various cultures in Nigeria, various zones and all that. By the way, remember, there is nobody, and it's important we state it here, there's nobody that was in a meeting, that attended a meeting with God during creation and chose where he should come from. You didn't choose to be an Igbo man or wherever you come from or wherever. It's just what God had designed. So wherever you find yourself, you are just as good as the other person. You are just as bad as the other person. But one thing is central. We all have conscience and we all have capacity that needs to be developed. If it is not positively developed, then the result will be negative and destructive. But if it's positively developed, everybody will be happy. So there's no need tagging anybody, a poor person, a this, a that. No. Can you tell me what had happened in the 70s and 60s? Are the leaders and movers of those times the present leaders and movers? The answer is no. So poverty can only be dynastic, where people are made to believe that they are permanently supposed to be poor. And policies are targeted at addressing that, instead of creating a very competitive environment where people will strive, survive, and according to their capacity. That was what we faced when we were growing up at the University of Lagos. When we got in there to read our undergraduate, I never paid a penny beyond 9 naira. Feeding were free, everything. I mean, why can't the current undergraduates have similar opportunities?
Prof, there is an argument. There is a very contentious argument that some of these things we are saying it from the point of our urban dwelling. We live in Abuja, we live in Lagos, we live in Port Harcourt, in Kano, in Kaduna, and therefore our world view is urban-centric. That this alleviation, this poverty alleviation of 800 naira or 8,000 naira per household is targeted at those families near the borders of Sambisa Forest who cannot make a living and see the roads the way we are seeing them, and so they need the 8,000 to at least take one step back out of poverty. And that our argument is not just presumptuous, but that it is elitist.
No, rather, that other argument is unrealistic. We have to. There's no part of Nigeria today that should not have the developmental consciousness wherever. Can anybody tell me a part of Nigeria today that is not entitled to development? Why do the Revenue Mobilization Commission have those bases for allocation of resources? Where do we have representations down to every ward anywhere? Look at the members of House of Reps, Senate, and all that. They are not just from the urban areas. Look at facilities all over the place, industries, various institutions of government. The simple problem is that they have all been allowed to fail. If today every state government decides to devote 1 billion every 3 months for industrial development within a state, you can imagine what that will come to. By the time the local governments, each local government gets 1.5 trillion to establish an industry, I mean, what are we talking about?
Prof, can we borrow from one of the Obasanjo's policies? I do not know whether this your thought framework can be applied. For instance, one of the things the Obasanjo administration did was to carry agriculture. Let me cite Kano State, which I have seen. to carry agriculture and irrigation down inside the communities. And at a point, Kano State was overwhelming this country with tomatoes. And that production has spawned one or two industries. Do you think that this money I'm thinking is being thrown at poverty can be aggregated for such targeted funding?
That is exactly what I have said. If you add the Naira equivalent of $800 million, add it to the 500 billion which the federal government is marking directly, each local government in this country will have a minimum of 1.5 trillion. And with 500 million, you will put up a 5-star industry in every locality, both capital investment, the working capital, and the money you pay within the lag period, within the time you start and when you go into the market. Then you are now already creating a basis for recovery and continuation and multiplier effect for the economy. And that is how the economy survives. Now, the $800 million from the World Bank is a loan. I hope the World Bank should be careful even in granting some of these facilities, especially when it is not backed up with very reliable cash flow expectations for the future. I think that is the issue. But if they've granted such funds, then we should be able to put it in areas where the prospect of repayment will be very high. Then where it will organically reinforce development. That is the issue. So if there's no way, you can never, I've tried it even at a personal level, there's no way you can dish out money to somebody and change that person. Even in my local parlance, they say you cannot carry a child well if that child have not raised the two hands. Nobody is poor. I don't believe in that. Most of us, if you want to define poverty, you want to think, oh, we came from, most of these governors and senators you are seeing came from such background, but they at a point said no to poverty, ignited their head, worked well, moved into town. Who, the people in the urban areas, don't they need little servants, mechanics, guards from which they will grow, they will bring to town?
Don't they need food?
Yeah, don't they need food and all that? The big industries, the big universities, they are located in far rural areas, and once such happens, it develops the area. That's the truth. So there is no rural area such that the human beings there do not see what is happening. They don't link up. They don't go to school.
They don't even go out. They don't see people driving cars.
They just remain there statically. If that is the case, then all of us ought to have been going naked, because that is the traditional state of man. So I think that the problem is more in rejecting poverty. We have to reject poverty consciously.
Prof, there is, okay, my producer says go ahead, but you don't have too much time. But look, one of the programs of the last administration, which seems to have been gotten from this mindset of throwing money or throwing material on a problem, is the school feeding program. Our children were being given food once a day, and it was said one balanced meal a day. That was to improve nutrition. I know that, for instance, the primary school just close to my house in the village, some of the children would not even come to school, but when they hear the bell for the meal, they run down to eat the meal and go home. Some of them will go, they are given the meal, and they are coming out on the way, they throw the wheel in the wheel and say, this is feed for my mother's chicken. That malnutrition that government was trying to address, just like this poverty we're trying to address, do you think that this government should allow the last government continue with that kind of policy of trying to solve malnutrition by giving food to children?
Well, that could just be happening as a way of
Attracting the children to school.
the children to school. Not that it should be fundamental. Rather, empower the households. When the parents are empowered, they are working, they are earning income, there are industries that people are living on, then the child is automatically empowered and well fed. So the focus should be on creating organic households that will be thriving with prospects. Then there's nobody who will be eating while the child is hungry. But then it could still be part of it, because in my own days we normally enjoy the bazaar.
Yeah.
St. Stephen's Church.
Not to, don't,
That's the only opportunity we eat rice
I ate fresh fish and eggs in secondary school. I wasn't eating. My mother would rather trash you for being a glutton trying to eat eggs in the kitchen.
Exactly. So
but in secondary school,
yeah,
I was opportunity to eat eggs.
Exactly. So government should do that. It's part of their responsibility. The budgets are there for that. But when it becomes ceremonial, when it becomes a show matter, it becomes a problem. And whatever aggregate, you see, this poverty has various components, various variables into it. That if you want to run an equation on that, you will see a lot of variables inside that. Although each of those variables should be addressed.
Okay, Prof, we have dwelt quite for long on this 8,000 naira for households. Now, 185.236 billion is allocated to the Ministry of Works and Housing to alleviate the impact of the severe flooding experienced in the country in 2020 on road infrastructure across the 6 geopolitical zones. Isn't that common sense? Isn't that sensible? Because even that money, apart from fixing the roads, would also seep into the larger economy.
Exactly, and also it will also help to install containment policy, because NIMET is still doing the same prediction. So they have to, the government should also take a proactive measure to prevent future occurrence and ensure that the people go home to their homes from IDP camps. We need to close all IDP camps. Let people go back home and settle. It's unfortunate if a government is running and people are living in open fields under the tree in their own country.
Now, Prof, I began this conversation by drawing your attention to what I looked at as unfair reward structure that the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission was trying to create by the kite it flew. In this 500 billion naira allocation, 70 billion is allocated to the National Assembly, and please hear me out, to support the working conditions of new members. This, therefore, is, like my people say, you catch a thief and you make a law. And not that you made the law and use the law to catch the thief. This allocation is being made because new members have come in. The new members, would they require special funds to settle into an institutional performance?
Yeah, somehow. Though the only caveat there is that I have not seen the exact detail of the breakdown.
Yes. I want to throw up some factors.
But yeah.
Maybe some of the new members need accommodation in Abuja. Some of the new members need to update their wardrobes. Some of the new members may need to have cars. Some of the new members may need to have superior fragrances, perfume fragrances, to look honorable and to look distinguished as senators. Do you cast your vote for this kind of thinking?
I didn't do that, and it looks...
In that context, it does not make sense, because even the greatest, the biggest savior of humanity, Jesus Christ, you know where he was born? He saw the condition and he came. So there is beauty in simplicity. There is beauty in being very serious and work focused. We don't need the fanciful dressing and all that. We look at the quality of legislation, the quality of oversight and all that. Those have no bearing with the dressing or whatever. Those are very pedantic approach to their welfare. But they have not clearly said that the whole 70 billion will be going to them. Maybe it's for the National Assembly. That may even involve payment for their aides or something.
I don't think it's particularly directed at
payment for their aids is appropriated in a National Assembly budget.
Yeah.
This is a special fund from the 500 billion to alleviate their own poverty, or alleviate the impact of the subsidy removal, so that they can have working conditions better for the new.
I don't know what better conditions other than the one they are already enjoying. I don't know. It's when we get a further detail of the actual targeting of that money that one will be able to take a position. But from where I'm sitting, I will just feel that, well, perhaps it is money for the National Assembly in view of issues that may arise out of a new house, like printing other papers.
Of these are for new members.
Only new members.
Clearly stated, support the working conditions of new members.
Good. That will now lead to tracking, asset tracing of what had happened to the assets acquired for the 9th Assembly. So a lot has to do with financial reporting and accountability. Until these facts are clear, does it mean that once you're a member, if you are leaving, you clean up the office and evacuate everything that is there? Are there special allowances or block funds that should be given to any new member for whatever reason? I don't know that. These are things that fuel violence in political context, because you make the political...
My producer is giving me signal. I want us to cap this conversation with what I may call the consumptive thinking that governance suffers in Nigeria. Is there any way we can cause our political thinkers, our governance thinkers, to begin to reduce consumption as the only thing that can drive effective governance? And what I mean by consumption, Prof, you know, every thought about governance and government positions is about allowances, remuneration, comfort, travels. If they want to hold an important board meeting, they make provision for it to be held in Dubai. If Dubai is no longer popular, they may in fact want to go to the moon. Consumptive thinking within government, within governance circles, even in the minds of civil servants, they make recommendations on consumptive thinking. Is there any way we can address it?
Very straight, very straight. And these issues had been canvassed in countries that we call developed countries. You see, we call ourselves developing because we don't want to change destructive pattern of governance. And what do I mean by that? We need to move from government does not do business to government must do business. Government is business. You cannot gather resources of a people, almost 90%,
and you say you don't do business. And what does that mean? It simply means you are for waste. Government should start conducting all businesses with private sector consciousness, because most of the people that govern so badly, that incur a lot of waste in governance, are very successful private businessmen. In most cases, when some people finish like from governor, being a governor or senator, he goes to establish a business. He does not continue half. In fact, 10%
of the waste
he condones in government is not run in private. Why is China growing? Why is the US surviving? Why is Britain surviving?
Japan.
These are all government-supported structures, because government gets the resources, and you must be efficient in managing it. Otherwise, it looks ridiculous that government should be expecting taxes from effective management of firms and organizations while they conduct their own affairs very wastefully. So that private sector consciousness must start. And believe you me, we can take the very first step. And what is that? Life imprisonment for any obvious case of corruption above a certain threshold. You go to prison for life. That will solve the problem. That will remove the indiscipline in the system. In fact, the indiscipline is so massive, financial and otherwise. We have to bring back discipline to this country, to this economy, so that things can work. And people will suffer severely once they divert public resources wastefully.
Well, so that things can work, all this conversation in the past 30 minutes, a little more, is on getting things to work in the interest of the people. It is a critique and not necessarily criticism. Government policies, two of them, have engaged our conversation this afternoon. The first is the 140% increase being proposed by a federal institution. Thank God the presidency says it has no hand in it and doesn't seem to have an interest in it. The second is the one the government itself has proposed by itself, 500 billion naira for alleviating the harsh effects of its own policy, removal of subsidy on premium motor spirit, and its allocation. We've raised questions, we've done some analysis, we've tried to provide some solutions. I hope that all this conversation sits well with those in government. I've been speaking with Professor Owoh, and of course you know he's been here once, twice, 3 times. Gentleman healed in financial matters, public financial matters, a development gentleman, and very patriotic in his approach to issues of this nature. Prof, thank you very much for coming to the conversation.
Thank you very much.
My name remains Mwabo Zenjok, and you know that this conversation never ends. It continues week after week. Let's see you again next Sunday. Good afternoon.